Hi everyone. Well, it gives me great pleasure. I've got a Brisbane icon here with me today, Gillian Hirst. Gillian's been in hospitality industry over 40 years, from owning businesses to now consulting and everything in between. So I'm not going to tell you her story. I've got the woman herself here, and congratulations on a stellar career.
Thank you.
And you've really seen some changes, which we'll touch on. But give us a snapshot of 40 years in a very condensed version of your journey.
Well, I started as an embryo. No, look, I started back in Victoria as a teenager. You know, a lot of kids start their apprenticeships when they're actually kids. So I was one of those and worked my way up, eventually got my own businesses and worked for large companies, small companies, private enterprise, you name it, I've been there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyone with a kitchen?
Anyone with a kitchen or not. I mean, I've done over 1,000 covers from under a staircase. So, you know, catering takes you to some really weird places.
Yes.
So yeah, that as well. But that's what the hospitality industry is like. You just adapt to what's thrown at you.
Yeah. So let's unpack some of it. So now you're consulting.
I am.
Yep. So tell us, what problem do you solve right now?
One of the things that hits me almost every time is the size of the menus. It just blows me away. Like, you'll have a small operation with maybe 2 people in the kitchen and they've got a menu that originally would have been devised for a team of 15, 12 or 15. So they're taking on that because this is what they're told by who knows, or they're copying the place down the road, or this is just what looks good on social media, this is what everybody's doing. And it's not going to work for them. They're carrying too much stock, they're expecting too much out of their staff, and it's just draining their resources. Yeah. So, you know, cut those menus down, folks. It's so easy. It's the first thing you should look at. If things are under pressure, if you're under stress, just go to that, because it's something you can achieve pretty quickly. Yeah. And often, like, people will say to me, oh, no, I can't. They're our best sellers. Okay, let's have a look at them. Yeah. And when you pull them apart, man, you're not making money on that.
Yeah, which segues into the next part, is the costing side. There's a few aha moments when you step into a kitchen and show people that what might be their best seller is actually going backwards because they're making, say, minus $1 or minus $2 on the dish.
Yeah. Or they're even worse, they could have a whole loss-making centre within their business. I mean, one example is a cafe that it did some night trade, but it was mainly daytime, but they really prided themselves on their pizzas. But their pizza oven was just like the equivalent in a car would be a 1950s gas guzzler, you know, like it was just screaming through the electricity. Now, they didn't realise it, but they were losing money every time they turned that machine on. For them to actually get a profit out of that piece of equipment, they would have had to have done what was humanly impossible to actually process through that machine. So, you know, that's something that people really have to start looking at, aging equipment with unprecedented, hate that word, but unprecedented energy costs. Yeah. Sometimes you've just got to throw it on the scrap heap. Sometimes, or just cut that bit out, turn it off. Don't use the damn thing. Use it as a table. You know, anything. But
so straight into it, right? Number one, menu design. Make sure your menu suits your audience, but suits, more importantly, is sustainable. And sustainable for your staff, sustainable for your stocks, sustainable for your pricing. And the next one is know your numbers. Something I bang on all the time, and you must come across this all the time.
Absolutely, you know. And look, I know from times when you're not flush, things aren't great. You don't want to look at your bank account. Right? That's the last thing you want to look at. But if you can look at your business as always have in mind, I'm going to sell this. I am making this to sell, whether you are or not.
Correct.
Think about what an outsider would see if they looked at your books. Think about what an outsider would see if they looked at your operation closely. Yes. So if you pay that attention, you'll suddenly find yourself doing it for you.
Yes.
Even though in your mind you're really doing it, you think you're doing it, you've talked yourself into, I'll find a buyer, I've got to make this good. So in the process, you create a good business because you start paying attention to those little details, like why are the wages up by 5%? Oh, that's because of this. Well, let's not do that again.
Yeah. I call it being sale ready. If you operate in any business to be sale ready, then you'll run the best performance you can, regardless of whether you want to sell it or not.
Yeah, that's right.
So you brought in another one. You're segueing beautifully. You can tell this wonderful lady's experience. Wages. Tell me, how's it changed over 40 years, both from the skills capability right?
Yeah.
And then the productivity side of things, because that's my number one word for 2024.
Productivity?
Is productivity.
Okay. So from the skill side of things, we're in a bad place. I can't sugarcoat it. We are in a really bad place. And that's been happening. That's been a slow slide for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Maybe
because of the lack of apprenticeships and the traineeships?
Well, look, the structure itself wasn't sustainable. People weren't going to continue working like that. And I would hate to see, being a mother now, I would hate my kids to go through what I went through.
Fair
so
call.
I don't advocate for the old days. They did work, but obviously they weren't sustainable because they're not around anymore.
Correct. And you can't be living on $5 an hour or $7 an hour.
No, that's right. It's not fair to the kids.
Correct.
So the whole industry needs a shake-up, and to get our kids trained is paramount. Otherwise, well, we've seen massive changes. We know we're living it. I don't have the golden answer, I'm afraid, on how to get us back on track, but the integrity and the intent has to be there within business. And I think we have to look at a hybrid model.
Yeah, agreed. There's got to be some sort of incentive for an operator to put on a trainee. I mean, the model I talk about, and I'd love your opinion on this, is say a 6 month to 12 month trainee wage, but you can only have them on that wage for say 6 months, 12, and it's not $7 an hour, right? If the rate's $35 an hour, then you're paying $28 an hour for 6 months to 12 months to get them, so a little bit like government. I mean, government doesn't do a lot of things right, but they do some things okay. Their pay system, if you come in as a trainee, you're an AO1, and then you're an AO2, an AO3, AO4, and each bandwidth means you've got more skills. Each more skills means you've got more pay. And again, I'm not advocating low wages because everyone's got to live, but there does got to be some sort of hybrid model. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think it has to be whoever is controlling that from the competency-based side, because we've seen that style of training put in place, and where it fails is they want to get the kids signed off as fast as they can so they can get their $2,000.
Yeah.
So I do know personally, I have friends and colleagues who do refuse to sign people off if they're not competent, but they're rare.
Yeah.
But the people that come out of those kitchens are good.
Yes.
They can work anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But it needs to be carefully considered, and the consultation has to be deep. It can't be superficial.
And you hit one of my key things there, as I talk about with government, and I do a lot of work with government, especially if they'll listen, is to consult with industry. Work with they don't have to have the magic answer, but sit down with, people like yourself, people like myself that have been around a long time, and say, hey, what's a good practice here? Rather than making a decision, I say they make a decision in their ivory tower and they cause a tsunami down at the business level. So let's talk about productivity. How are you finding the productivity? You're working in people's businesses, mainly hospitality, obviously, and seeing what they do. Well, there's no doubt the productivity is down.
Yep.
But give me your synopsis on that, and maybe some key takeaways on what you would do.
Look, unfortunately, that comes back to the lack of training again. A kitchen that I pulled apart about 18 months ago, the business itself wasn't making a profit, not even breaking even. Yeah. And it was in a bit of a strange situation in that the person that owned it could afford for that to go on for other reasons that I won't go into. So there's a business that's been going for a number of years. It's not making a profit. The kitchen is resting on its laurels and enjoying the ride, and somewhat unapproachable.
Yeah.
No thought to the process, no thought to how they could make it faster, how they could be more efficient, how they could. So basically, I went in there, said to them, and this is, we're going to talk too about how I approach somebody's business. Yes. That depends completely on the brief, obviously, but on one thing. Do you want to keep this kitchen, or do you want to lose this kitchen?
Yeah. You start with the outcome in mind, which is I really like that.
Absolutely. So I'm going in forearmed. I know what I want this outcome to be. Yep. And I know what the owner wants it, which is more relevant, more important. So I said to them, my brief on that was do what you have to do.
Yeah. Let's get profitable.
Yeah, it has to be profitable. I don't care. This is not.
And see, it wasn't a lack of will; it was a lack of skill, and that's where obviously, Gillian is great help for those of you that might need help. And I'm going to get to a curly question, which you're going to answer when people go, "Hey, I can't afford a consultant," so that's coming.
Yep.
Because every good consultant pays for themselves 3 times over.
Oh yeah.
But in this case, you obviously turned around, and were you able to turn them around from non-profit to become profitable?
Within 3 months.
3 months, isn't that great? Because otherwise it was a spiral to the bottom, right? And that's what happens. And the number one problem we're finding, Gillian, is this. We did the independent survey in 2023, our own money, not government money, we're not government funded. Did the survey over 9,000 pieces of data, that includes people and datas and all sorts of stuff, 9,000 pieces of individual data. And the number one problem that exists out there right now in business is not red tape and expenses. It actually is the business owner's know-how. Right? And that's why you need people like what you're doing, people like what we're doing, to come in and help them to understand how to operate their business, because that is, and data shows it, the number one problem out there right now is that people. So these guys that you just mentioned, without brands and names, but this case study, call it, is a classic example of that. They've been around for a long time. Times have changed. No more time. When things are difficult, you've got to know how to operate your business. But if you don't know how to operate it, you call in the experts, right? So let's get to that question. When somebody says, "But Gillian, I'd love to have your skills and your expertise, but I simply can't afford it."
It's like you said before, you can't afford not to. And the sooner, the better. The sooner I can get in there, the better I can the faster I can turn things around, and the less money you're going to lose.
And knowing you're not going to take somebody's money if you can't help them.
Hell no.
Yeah. You say, "Hey,
I've got a reputation.
Of course.
Foremost, I have a reputation that I have to.
Okay.
I have to keep it, preserve it, and everybody knows. You can just leave a comment on anybody's.
Yes.
Anything you want to say about anyone, it's free for all these days. So I'm in there to help. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I know I can walk into places. It's frustrating sometimes. I can walk into somewhere and just feel sick. I'm only there to eat, but I can see what's happening.
Yeah, you can see the spiral to the bottom.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it without even looking almost. I can smell it.
Yeah.
So, that kitchen I was talking about before, I gave them an ultimatum. I said, because they were hostile. They're like pack animals, chefs.
Yeah.
Really, they're like...
A breed of their own.
They are. But once they know you know, that's when you
It's not opinion, you're working off the data.
Yeah.
So tell us the steps then. So somebody says, right, they put up their hand, they've acknowledged, I need help in my cafe and restaurant. What's the steps? Obviously they call you. Talk us quickly through the process.
Okay, so we have a conversation.
Yes.
It can be in person or it can be over the phone. I find out what your main concerns are and just a little bit of history about yourself, a little bit of intel on who's who in the zoo and what you're really worried about and how you see it playing out. What's your ideal scenario to come out of this meeting? So then I go in and I'll do a site inspection, introduce myself to the staff, do a bit of a recce around the kitchen, whoever's in charge of the kitchen, whether they're a chef or a cook or whatever, sit down, have a coffee with them, have a bit of a chat, talk to them about how they feel about their work, just get into...
Collect the data.
Collect the data, get the conversation going. All the time, checking the kitchen out.
Yeah.
Is it clean?
Yeah. Is it organised?
Is it organised?
Overstocked, understocked?
Is it overstocked? They're nearly always overstocked.
Yeah.
Like straight away, there's money. Yeah. I just see overstocked kitchen, there's $500, there's $100, there's $50. There, it should be in your bank account. It shouldn't be sitting on that shelf.
Correct.
Or in that fridge.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that, and very bad. I'll give you a funny purchasing story.
Yes.
Right? So there's a kitchen and they think they're the bee's knees, but they're not. They're doing a terrible job. The business is running at a loss. Chefs count numbers, people, heads.
Yeah.
They don't count figures.
I always say to owners, show your chefs the bank account because it's not the money that comes in that stays in the bank account. It comes out pretty quickly.
Yeah, they'll say, we did 100 covers. It means nothing to me.
Yeah.
So you've got to, that's a whole nother,
a
whole nother story. Anyway, where was I?
You're telling us about, you lost my train of thought.
Oh, yeah.
Lucky we get to edit
the purchasing.
Oh, that's it, the purchasing story.
Yeah, so this guy thinks he's top notch and he probably is a good chef in his own right, but he wasn't doing the right thing by that business. So they were making these, should have been volume salads for this business to sell, just to sell, keep it up there, keep them mounted up. And he was making this beautiful fennel salad, roast fennel salad, and his food was good.
Yeah.
But I said, why are you using baby fennel? Like, you know, that's a bit of a fine dining purchase, I would have thought. I said, are you buying it by the case or by the each? And he said, no, by the kilo. And I said, oh, okay, that's all right then. So, you know, I don't sort of take it any further on the spot, but when I'm going through the invoices and things, I'll check. So he wasn't, you know, he was paying by the each. Yeah. So what should have been costing him something like $12 a carton was in fact costing him nearly $100. Well, not him, the business.
Yeah, yeah.
So that salad was costing, it was just ridiculous
The more he sold, the quicker you go broke.
Exactly. Yeah, let's get busy and do nothing and lose money.
Yeah, and lose it quicker, right?
Yeah.
So you've been around for a long time, and I mean that in a respectful way, because you certainly don't look like you've been in the industry for 40 years. One of my bugbears is your, you know, those reward books now. Everyone's coming out and going, and I've had, in last year alone, I would have had, say, let's call it 5, but it would have been more. People reach out and say, we've got a new system, we've got a new voucher book, we've got a new token, but we want people to advertise in it. Can you tap into your network and, you know, and have people do 2-for-1 meals or 25% discount? And my response to them is
25%.
correct. And my response is, you obviously don't come from our industry because you don't know what's happening. But we're going to help them get more bums on seats. And my answer to them is, you're going to help them go broke quicker because they're not even making 10% at the moment.
No, they're lucky to make 2.
Talk us through your thoughts.
That's just madness. And I remember in the 80s, someone trying to sell that to me.
What was it called? The good food? Not the good food, but...
it might have been the good food.
No, it's called something else. I can't remember. They used to sell the book to you for $50 or something and had all the vouchers in it, and you'd go around and, you know, and you'd bloody get 2-for-1 meals and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, back in the day when you're doing 35% profit and 30% profit, no worries. But now the margins aren't even 10%, right?
No.
So we share that bugbear.
Absolutely. No, that just does not make sense to me at all. And if you said if anyone that was thinking about it, just think about the maths. Just don't think about anything else except for the maths. All you're doing is cooking something for someone for nothing, for less than nothing. So if that's your thing, go. So
segues nicely into, now's not a time to be discounting, right?
No.
I say now's the time to be value adding.
Yes.
And whether that's service, whether that's a little, you know, limoncello or a little glass of masala or whatever it is, or free ice cream for the kids, now's the time to, and is that one of the strategies you'd be recommending to people now? Well, give us some of the strategies around value adding versus discounting.
Well, upselling. So you've got to get your floor staff well trained, so that they understand how to upsell without it being a push.
Without it being a sale.
Yeah, you don't want to be rude. Today is all about being authentic and transparent, right? That's why I hate those big ass menus that are A3, that are laminated, that you cannot change in a moment, right? They're too hard, they're too cumbersome, they're too big. If you bring it down and take control of how of what you put forward to people, what you offer, you've got the flexibility and you're not carrying all that stock.
Great tip.
And you can, I've got to move something out of the dry store, get it on the specials.
Yeah.
And mark it up. There was a restaurant I ran for a long time, again, I won't say any names, but I had it to the stage, it wasn't one of my restaurants, but I had it to the stage where almost 70% of the orders came from the specials. They would walk in and say, what are the specials? And that's when you know you've got them. You've got their confidence, you've got their love.
They trust you.
They trust you and they're there to see what's next.
And specials is not discounting. I love that you said that before. Specials is actually, it's a special prepared meal.
It's special, it costs more, my friend.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's a big takeaway there. Specials is not, hey, I'm going to offer something cheaper. Special is, it's something a little bit different, something completely different than what's on the menu, or it's showcasing something, you know, and as you said, often it can be a lot dearer too.
Absolutely. It's not, specials are special.
Okay.
And you've got to keep that mindset and teach your staff and show them why.
Okay, if you could change one thing in our industry right now, what would it be?
One thing, there's too many, that's the problem.
Limitations on visas, there you go. The 24-hour work cap is one.
That would be I just can't believe that's even an issue. I can't believe we even need to talk about that.
Well, how can you survive? Well, my thing on the 24-hour capping of the visas is, how can somebody survive on 24 hours a week?
I know. I don't understand. I mean, this is, again, it's archaic. They're holding on to things because you've got to let the Aussies have the jobs.
But we're at 3% unemployment. If we're at 10 or 12, I understand.
I know. It just seems like they're moving at glacier speed when everybody's falling over in the meantime.
So my take on that, Gillian, is government needs to work, because I'd rather give solutions than badger them, is to say, well, you need to get involved. And you can see, like, our Brisbane City Council has been progressive right back to the Sawley days when I was 17 and Jim Sawley was there. He would come out to our cafe. I worked at Cosmopolitan Coffee, which was an institution. He would come out and say, hey, what can we do to help your industry? Right through then to Campbell Newman was brilliant. He put round tables together where he said, bring your expertise and help the city. We weren't paid. Bring 22 experts around the table from different industries and say, tell us what we can do to help your industry. That these governments can, and it's not LNP or Labor, because Jim Sawley was Labor government. But Brisbane's always been progressive because it's had a government that's always worked with industry and consulted with industry, right? And state and federal, unfortunately, don't always do that. Have you ever been approached, or have you ever done work with government people to help them better the system?
No, I haven't.
Well, and if politicians are listening to this, you got one of the most experienced people sitting here, Gillian Hirst, and but yet has never sat and shared her experience with government to help them with stuff, and that speaks volumes, right? So, because you could have such a big impact on doing stuff like that.
100%. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and there's a lot of people within the industry that are doing well that want to help.
Yeah. What motivates you? So what motivates you? What drives you? I mean,
I've just always been into the industry. Even like before I was old enough to know why. I've just always wanted to cook. And once I walked into the first kitchen in Melbourne in 1979, I fell in love. I knew that was where I was going to stay.
Isn't that amazing? Any closing remarks?
Only that the Coffee Commune is kind of like a big hospo hug. I reckon, and it's only getting better, and there's so much to offer. There's so much support here for people that, HR.
We're doing our best, yes.
All
the workshops.
Energy workshops, all of this sort of stuff, every bit helps. And look, even the easiest part is that you've got other people to talk to. You're not on your own, because it can be very isolating, especially if you're going through a bad time.
Yeah, and you make a good point. We love having you part of our commune, obviously, as a partner, because what you do speaks volumes, and you bring so much experience to the table. But Gillian makes a good point there, because often we hear people say, I don't have the time. You need to make the time. Remember that the number one problem in this industry right now is operating skills, is operators not knowing how to operate their business, and the commune speeds that up. Gillian Hirst helps you do that. Like I said, don't worry about the cost. If she costs you $1, she's going to save you $3. So, and if she can't, she'll tell you. So, I can't stress that enough, that it's a time now for people, especially those listeners that are in cafes or restaurants. It's a time to be working on your business right now. And if you're saying you don't have the time, well, you're going to have plenty of time in the next 12 months because you won't have a business. So, look at your worst case scenario and, get to work. Now's the time to get to work. You've got experts like Gillian Hirst. Thank you for being part of the commune.
It's a pleasure. I've got one more thing.
Yes.
Don't look at your neighbours and do what they're doing. Yeah. Unless you know them and you're talking to them and it's an open discussion. Don't just turn around and say, he's got this pricing, I'm going to do that, or he's doing this discount and he's going to get busy and I'm not, so I'll do it. Because you're at a race to the bottom. Yeah. Don't join in. Don't get sucked in.
Stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great point. We'll finish on that. Thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure.
And as I said, we love having you part of the commune.
Thank you. I love being here.